From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, this is a Headache Soul production. Welcome to Just the Tip-Sters, America's favorite true crime podcast, and I'm your host, the ghost of Larry King.
I was wondering what the suspenders were about. Like, this is...
and the tie. Yeah, right. I was just doing it in honor of Halloween. So I'm actually Melissa Morgan. I'm your host, Melissa Morgan. With me today is my lovely and talented co-host, Joshua Bevan. Say hello, Joshua.
Hello.
And we received word this week that our amazing tipsters and Joshua's fantastic description of his balls has gotten us an extended contract with Manscaped. So you're going to be hearing commercials for them coming up, peoples, and, get used to it. That's all I'm saying.
I'm very grateful for this. Yes.
For your balls?
For
I am
balls.
too.
I'm so grateful for...
I am too. So happy for Joshua's balls. They earned me money.
Right.
Who knew I could say that as an adult?
Oh my gosh.
Joshua's balls are earning me dough.
Right. Speaking of which, support for Just the Tipsters is brought to you by Manscaped, who are the best in men's below-the-waist grooming.
Yeah. Yes, they are.
Yes.
They are the masters.
I'm very much enjoying the products.
Oh, thank God! I thought you were going to say something.
No. I thought we were done. We kind of fizzled out, and now I'm like, okay, cool. I get to use these products forever, though. And now,
no, there's more.
But now there's more.
Yeah,
sweet. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, very sweet. Thank you for your balls and for your service. Thank you for your service. To this podcast and to Manscaped.
Yeah.
Is there a code
and
people can use?
Thank you, Manscaped, for giving us the 20% off code plus free shipping with the code JUSTTHETIP. So if you go to manscaped.com and enter the code JUSTTHETIP, you'll get 20% off worldwide shipping.
Yeah.
20% off. 20% off your purchase and free
worldwide. Yeah, not 20% off shipping. What's wrong with you? It's a much better deal than that.
Yes.
And I do have to say, tipster Jeff, who I wanted to record a live read, but I don't know why he's shy about talking about his balls on radio, but
I can't imagine.
I guess not everyone's like you, open and free with your balls, just talking about them all day long. He said that I was allowed to say he was very happy with the product and he really liked the boxers.
Oh,
because they have the ball hammock. I'm going to call it that. I don't know. It's a thing that keeps them close at hand.
Very snug.
Yeah, he said it's supportive.
Very supportive.
Yeah, very supportive.
Very supportive.
So yeah, he really likes the boxer. So they have
perfect.
They don't just have the items you use for grooming. They have I love the t-shirt.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you do too.
No, I absolutely
soft
do.
And comfy and all that. Have you worn the boxers?
I have not worn the boxers.
You don't wear underwear, do you?
Listen,
are you a Mr. Commando?
I don't know how deep we're going to get on that.
Pretty deep, I think. Balls deep. We're getting balls deep.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's a woman that has to say that. That's what's really awful about this whole experience.
Well, thank you, Manscaped, for being so supportive of this podcast.
All right,
and Jeff's balls.
I just want to say we are killing it in Macau.
Again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, killing it. We are killing it. Back on Macau's charts, the Apple Podcast charts.
Excellent.
By the way, I believe we discussed this. Macau is the Las Vegas of Asia.
Yes.
And Dubai is the Las Vegas of the Middle East. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or the UAE. Dubai is the Las Vegas of the United Arab Emirates.
Sure.
So,
I mean, it's all right. Yeah.
We are very popular in places that are Vegas-like.
I am very curious, and I would love to hear from some tipsters in those locations.
Me too.
And see what their life is like. Who are they?
Are they charts? Yeah.
Yeah. Why are they expatriates? Are they
I never thought about that.
Who's listening to us over there?
Right. I bet Dubai has a lot of expats. I don't know about Macau. I think it's fascinating. You have so many, I feel like now I work for Delta. You have so many choices when you listen to podcasts. Thank you for flying Just the Tipsters. I mean, it's just so fascinating to me that anyone gives a crap in countries like that. I don't know why, but bless you people. We are very grateful. Very grateful. Oh, I I should stop here for a moment and say we will cover the Delphi case at some point. I don't want to. I do not want to. Everyone else covers it, and they probably do a great job. However, Tipster Sherry asked me to cover it, and I don't want to. But there is a large update. I would imagine anyone who listens to true crime knows that. They arrested, after 5.5 years, a man who has been charged on Monday, on Halloween. They arrested him on Friday. I guess that would be the 28th. And held him over the weekend, moved him around to different facilities for his own safety, because I'm sure he's the most hated man in Indiana and maybe in the country at this moment. And he was finally officially charged on Monday, October 31st, with the murder of Liberty German and Abigail Williams. So Abby and Libby, I know that Superintendent of the Indiana State Police, Doug Carter, said at original press conference he couldn't wait until he said today is the day. And 5.5 years later, he got to say today is the day. So there have already been changes. One of the other reason I didn't want to cover it is so many people have covered it, and I will just be honest, they've covered it incorrectly. They have pointed fingers at people. When I say incorrectly, I don't mean for my standards. I mean for the universe's standards. They pointed fingers at people that potentially have nothing to do with it. It's all in an effort to, get the right person. But I'm really unhappy sometimes with the morals of people who host podcasts. I endeavor, and most of the people I know endeavor, to get the best, most correct information out there. And when you make your own opinion and your own assumptions the main focus of your podcast, you do a horrible disservice, not just to podcasters, but to humankind. So there are podcasts who have made their bank on pointing fingers at wrong people. Granted, some of the people may have had terrible actions and done terrible things, and maybe they needed to get, taken off the streets for those reasons, but they sure didn't need to be accused of murder. So we'll see. We'll see if Richard Allen, who is still presumed innocent, a pharmacy tech at CVS in a town of 3,000 people, Delphi.
Wow.
And Superintendent Carter said the entire time he will be hiding in plain sight. And he was.
Yeah. I mean, I don't imagine you couldn't in a town of so small.
Well, it has one sort of a meat processing plant. They thought someone could have been from a neighboring community and come there to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the thing that bothers me and will keep me awake at night is that I don't believe someone wakes up in their early 40s and who is married with a child, a home in the community, works in the community, and decides today is the day to kill people. I don't believe that's a first time thing.
Okay.
And it wasn't like sloppy and hurried. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he just happened upon two beautiful young girls on a bridge when he was taking a walk on a day off. Or maybe this was catfished and planned. They think that could have been an issue. The young girls were both very good at social media and maybe a Snapchat thing. They had been catfished by someone. They don't know if it was him. Could have been someone else. But yeah, it's hard for me to picture someone walking up on two girls, taking them someplace, a different location. That's pre-planned, premeditated in my mind, or you're smart enough to know.
Got it.
And then leaving them posed and leaving them almost exsanguinated.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting if he pled not guilty. I don't understand, but there's a lot we don't know yet. That's the other thing. Now, the reason Tipster Sherry said she wanted me to cover it is because she wanted to know why everything was sealed. The actual charges, the specific details of how they got him are all sealed, and they will become public at some point. But what's fascinating is that I understand why the DA sealed them, because he wants to make sure that the case has every chance to get prosecuted without details coming out that could compromise it, that a defense attorney could say that was out in the, that's, prejudicial to my client. So what's interesting is that there's already been, a suit filed saying that the details need to be released. I don't know if it's by journalists or by who, but that's happened since he was charged on Monday.
Okay.
So there's going to be a whole lot of twists and turns and changes in this case. And I
Mhm.
appreciate Sherry's patience. She was so gentle and kind with me. She was like, please cover this. I think you would do a great job. And I'm like, I don't think I would do a great job. And she said, you don't have to do it now. You can do it. I mean, it's like, I feel like people who understand me, who listen to this podcast, approach me like you found a deer in your backyard and you have your hand out and you're like, you can smell, I have some peanuts. Do you want to smell the peanut?
Aw.
Yeah. So it's like, it's very kind of her to do that. So I don't know when, but we will cover it. There's a preliminary hearing in January and then maybe the charges actually being read in March. So we've got a couple of months.
There's a lot of time before the trial
Yes.
starts. Sure.
Yeah. Oh, there'll probably be a lot of time before the trial starts. That's just the prelim shit.
Yeah.
So, all right. So enough of that. I hope that.
So it's a promise. You absolutely will cover.
Thank you for winking because I am scared to death to do this because I just think other people will do it really great or really bad. And I would urge you to listen to the ones you feel do a really good job and the ones who do a really bad job. Please avoid those. I think I might be somewhere in the middle and I don't like that. I don't like being mediocre. So until I feel like I can do a bang up job, I don't want to cover it. But okay. So this episode is courtesy of Tipster Michelle, and she said she was grateful I did not block her after the whole black hole sun sunning your butthole thing that she sent me. She is a lovely human being and a wonderful friend to the podcast. Yeah, I'm not gonna block her, and I'm glad I didn't because she gave me, whether she knew it or not, a really interesting rabbit hole to go down. And it's one I wouldn't normally have.
But this is a different case.
Very different. I love Joshua when he comes in, he's like, did somebody die? And I'm like, look, motherfucker, true crime doesn't always have to be about murder. What if someone did terrible
Were the bodies
things?
mutilated? What are we getting into today?
How many parts were they cut into? So I'm going to say that this person may not have actually been responsible for the death of one person or 17,000 people, but he is responsible for the death of some souls because of molestation and rape and underage marriage and a factory that literally would put, China would be like, that guy's awful.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. And monetizing people's health and welfare. And yeah, he's just an awful person. So if you haven't figured it out, it's Tony Alamo.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know Joshua and I have a bit of a connection because of the Southern California thing.
Yeah, he has multiple churches out here, right? Yeah.
One really big one close to us.
Right.
They call it Agua Dulce, but I don't know. I guess that's probably part of Santa Clarita.
It's just up Sierra Highway here.
Yeah, Sierra Highway, not far. It's maybe like 5 miles from where I am right now, from my house. Mm-hmm. So Tony Alamo also had a big church in Arkansas. That's because that's where his wife was from. Blah blah blah. We're going to get into that. So, but I would like to explain that Tipster Michelle mentioned that just offhandedly, and then I made her give me the details. She's like, funny note about some of my history with true crime. And she mentioned where she lived that was a favorite hiding spot for Bonnie and Clyde and a few other nefarious characters in Oklahoma. And then here's the sentence that got me. And my mom once got into an argument with some members of Tony Alamo's cult in Western Arkansas when I was about 10.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, go on. And she did. And she gave me this great story. So I'm going to start with my introduction to this person and cult, because this will just let you know how dumb your friend Melissa is. I lived in Eastern Hollywood in Los Feliz, and where Tony Alamo would send his acolytes out would be along the Sunset Strip. So this is kind of a funny, weird thing. I was parked in a parking structure in a strip mall in Hollywood that actually housed the famous strip club, Jumbo's Clown Room. It had other businesses there, like a restaurant where I may have been getting some takeout for dinner. And that's Jumbo's Clown Room is very famous because Courtney Love worked there.
Did she? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
Have you been there, Joshua?
No, I have not been to Jumbo's Clown Room. I'm curious. It's come up multiple times in the last year or whatever. Like, I think I want to go experience that.
I think you do. Yeah. I would wear a hazmat suit, but go have a good time.
I hear it's a train wreck of
yes, sir.
Of gentlemen's clubs.
Yes, it is. It is the train wreck. You know what? You should do their advertising. Jumbo's Clown Room.
And if you want to sponsor the show, go ahead and give us an email.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Okay, so I was parked in a parking lot, and I came out, and there was a flyer under my windshield wiper, and I'm like, "What the fuck?" And it said Tony Alamo's music church or something, and I was like, "Well, this is fucked up." And I was, pardon me, I was dating Mark Humphreys at the time, a California native. And I go, I got this weird flyer on my car. It said the Tony Alamo Church. I thought he made boots. And Mark's like, sweetheart, that's Tony Lama? I'm like, oh, sorry.
Different people.
Different guy altogether. Okay. Different. There's a vowel at the front of his name. It's Alamo, not Tony Lama. It's Tony Alamo. And Tony Alamo's real name is Bernie Lazar Hoffman.
Wow.
Yeah, he was born in Missouri. And he wasn't born in a particularly religious household, but it was Jewish. And he would, change his story of his childhood depending on who he was telling a story to.
Okay.
But somehow he made his way to Los Angeles as a teenager because he was going to be a famous singer. That was just it.
Okay.
He was going to be famous. So before he and his poor, sweet cult members stick flyers under people's windshields, he moves to Los Angeles, and he wasn't really making it as far as a musician. He wasn't really catching on. So he started to lie and say, you know what, I used to sing, but I now represent the Doors, the Beatles, and the Rolling Stones.
Oh, as an agent or manager?
Yeah.
Like he's representing them.
Right.
Okay.
In the late 1960s.
Yeah.
So he would get musicians who usually didn't know how the music business worked. Surprise, surprise. And sign them. And then he would book them into gigs and then charge the venue a large percentage and give the artist a small percentage. So he was probably pretty good with money. He was able to buy like a small house off of Sunset Strip.
Okay.
So he lived there, which probably had a lot of cachet at the time. And I mean, it does now too.
Absolutely.
But, so it was sometime in the mid 60s that he said Jesus came to him and said that he would be returning soon and he wanted to devote his life to Jesus.
Okay.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. He also found ways to find things in the Bible that backed up his theory that polygamy was sanctioned. And anyway, we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
So he meets this woman named Susan Horn,
okay,
who had worked her way across the country with her youngest daughter, Chris. So Susan's real birth name is Edith. She was born in Arkansas. Bernie Lazar is Tony Alamo's real name. He's born in Missouri. So they're from a similar area.
Okay.
I think they spoke each other's shitty, scammy language.
Oh.
What Susan did is just, both of their level of shittiness is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. She took her youngest daughter and she would go to different churches across the country, and she made enough so they could get to Los Angeles because she was going to be a famous actress, and Tony Alamo was going to be a famous singer. She would... And she had a look like a lot of people who appeared on music shows from the 60s and 70s, like Hee Haw, or, she had like big bleached blonde hair, like a Tammy Wynette kind. Like,
gotcha.
If Tammy Wynette hit the skids, that's what Susan Horn would look like.
Okay.
She's the, bus and truck version of Tammy Wynette.
Oh, man.
And that's a terrible thing to say because Tammy Wynette was beautiful. Susan Horn, had this one fucking tooth that looked like it was dead. And, and now I sound like I'm talking funny because I'm actually pointing to a tooth because no one can see this on a podcast. Okay. But so she would go to different churches and then say, may I, after the service was over, she'd say, can I address the congregation? And she would then have her poor daughter, Chris, walk up the aisle wearing like rags and shoes with no heels and say, you know what, we've been doing mission work. We're missionaries in Africa. and we got to the United States to spread the word, and we are out of money. If you could donate some money, we would love to give back to Africa to do our missionary work to spread the word of the Lord.
Wow.
Yeah. Can you imagine using your child? So they got, enough donations to get to Los Angeles. And I should mention the wonderful articles that I've gotten information from. One is an author named Leah Carroll, who wrote for Refinery 29. And one is my beloved Delaney Bartlett, who writes for Medium.com. She is like the murder girl on Medium, and I love her.
You've mentioned her before.
She's amazing. I love her work. So it's like she said a meeting, her title of like that section of her article is called a meeting made in hell.
Oh boy.
So Tony and Susan meet. They end up in Las Vegas. They get married. They officially change their names there to Tony Alamo and Susan Alamo. And they've moved back to Los Angeles because Las Vegas doesn't suit them well, maybe because it's a town full of people who scam and they can
scammers, yeah.
And they're like low rent scammers, like they don't have a good game, So they get back to Los Angeles, and they are the founders of something called the Music Square Church. So they start recruiting people, and here's why I got a flyer in the 90s under my windshield wiper on Sunset Strip, because they would recruit street people in Hollywood. And he still had the home north of the Sunset Strip in a much nicer area than where I lived. Most people don't realize, unless you live here, Sunset Boulevard is many miles long and ends up at the Pacific Ocean. But I lived way on the other end in East Hollywood, in the, Los Feliz, Silver Lake, and the part that is now gentrified, but at the time was, kind of considered the, rougher part of town.
Sure.
So, they recruit street people, drug addicts, and what they refer to as dirty hippies. They offer them a place to live and feed them. In their little 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on Sunset, or north of Sunset, I guess. At one point, there were 200 people living there.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. So they kept getting, the health department called on them. And so this is how he then expands to our area, Joshua. So he buys, I think it was like 200 acres.
Oh, is it that big? Okay.
200 acres. He'd sold part of it off. They call it Agua Dulce, but let's just call it under the umbrella of Santa Clarita.
Sure.
Agua Dulce is a very tiny little area. I think that translates into sweet water.
Yeah. Well, the water, the if you drink water out off of people's wells there, it's so delicious.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing.
Oh, I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Okay, that I didn't know.
Yeah, it's amazing. And there's a couple of wineries up there.
Well, the first winery was actually developed by the owner of Mark's company.
Oh.
Ray Watt. No, it's called Agua Dulce Winery.
Yeah.
Not by Tony Alamo.
No. The grapes love the water. I mean, it's
wow.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a cute name. People call it Agua Dulce, which I don't like because that's wrong. It's Agua Dulce.
Okay. I wasn't going to.
You were going to correct me, weren't you? What do you think it's called, Pancho? Agua Dulce?
Dulce is in Spanish.
It's dulce.
Okay. Fine.
Anyway. It's my podcast. I'm going to call it whatever the fuck I want.
Call it what you want.
All right, Agua Dulce. Whatever. Anyway, he buys a large piece of property.
Okay.
And he builds his church, and it's still there. I mean, the building is still there. There's been a whole lot of infighting as far with the city, and he bragged that he had millions of dollars in water rights.
Oh.
And he didn't.
Oh.
Spoiler alert.
Okay.
Yeah. So like 200 followers are living in the house in Sunset, and then he buys a property. They call it Saugus Canyon. I've never heard of Saugus Canyon. I think that's incorrect. Yeah. I think what they mean is Sand Canyon.
Sand Canyon? Okay.
It's closer to Sand Canyon. I've never heard of a Saugus Canyon.
Yeah. I mean, Saugus is a town right here.
Yeah, but not
Canyon
that close to
a town
that.
right here.
Yeah.
I don't, somebody got mixed up.
Yeah, I think so too. So they have they build outhouses, outbuildings.
Oh, okay. So
where they have
camp.
Yes.
Okay.
20 to 30 people to one bunkhouse.
Oh, wow.
by then they've had like their 200 followers that were living in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house are now living in like camp quarters, like you said, a work camp.
Sure.
If they don't turn over all their money, they send them out to do like work on farms and say to sign over your check, or else you're lazy and selfish and won't get into heaven. They get like assistance checks from the government to sign it over to us.
Wow.
If they get money sent from their parents, which that's what a lot of cults do. It's fascinating how they all have the same kind of mindset, isn't it? Like if you get money from someone, you need to give it directly to us and we'll take care of you. And you'll be, given a place in heaven kind of shit. It's just,
wow.
Yeah. So it's usually people that are like down on their luck. They prey on people. This is the lowest form of scavenger where they prey on people who are having a hard time. There are those kind of cults who prey on people that are seekers. And it's always amazing to me that people that are so smart, really smart, get recruited into this shit. Some of these people had nowhere else to go, and you understand. You're given the promise of a family who loves you and takes care of you. It's heartbreaking. So you can't even believe this, in 1973, they expand their ministry and they began broadcasting weekly shows out of a large studio. And the show is called the Tony and Susan Alamo Show. And they would have musical acts, including a choir, and then Tony would sing. But they actually had like big stars, like Buck Owens and And I'll explain how he got into that world. So they would have, like gospel music and testimonials about how Tony and Susan, saved some of these people from, a life of drugs or sex work and crime. And it's picked up by radio stations across the nation and it's aired on Sunday mornings.
Oh, wow. Syndicated.
It's syndicated.
Wow.
They have a syndicated radio show. So I think they're getting a little priced out, even in the 70s, of living in California, taking care of everyone, even though he's stealing all their money. So he buys a large piece of property in Alma, Arkansas, because that's where Susan had grown up. Now, she hated Alma, but she told the followers that it's the promised land. So they build this, big mansion that Tony and Susan live in, and they, have this multi-purpose building that they shove everybody in. And, the Arkansas 71 highway and Interstate 40, it's a very large, like, shipping route at the time. So they were, in a travel route. So they're able to book in Alma, Arkansas. They're able to book huge names in country music to perform in their shitty multi-purpose room. Dolly Parton,
oh wow,
Buck Owens, Tammy Wynette, who Susan wanted to be, and Hank Williams Jr.
Wow.
So add to the, to the pot, they are a nonprofit organization because they're a church. They don't have to pay taxes.
Oh, okay.
And they are just taking everyone's money, and they don't have to pay for labor. A lot of the people worked for companies that Tony and Susan owned. And so they would get paid, but then they would say, turn your pay over to us.
Oh, man.
I know. Isn't this lovely? So workers were forced to work like 12 hours a day. Everything was rationed. Food, electricity. I mean, I don't know why you would put up with that. So in 1976, the Department of Labor ends up suing the church for $19 million in unpaid wages. I guess some of the followers were like, look, his labor practices are ridiculous, and we need to be paid. And of course, they never, because he had a lot of money, he was able to hire a really good attorney, and he used every strategy to, get the lawsuit to go away. In the meantime, he's still, like delays, et cetera. He's still raking in money. So in the 1980s, the scammer Tony Alamo really falls into his own in the fashion world.
Okay.
So I thought they were leather jackets, but it was a mixture of denim and leather.
They started actually making
yes,
denim jackets. Wow.
Denim and leather, and they are some of the most well-known jackets you've ever seen in your life in pop culture, and you didn't know.
Oh, wow.
The cover of Michael Jackson's Bad album. a black leather jacket with a bunch of buckles.
With all the, yeah.
Made by Tony Alamo. Sorry, made by the people Tony Alamo forced into slave labor.
Oh, wow.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
I mean, it's
cool.
the history of his weirdness is like, you know, I want to check and see when Tipster Michelle's mom, was it the 80s? Does she tell me when this happened? Might have been in the 80s, but so this is when Susan's still alive because they're living in Arkansas. And here's what Tipster Michelle said. We lived in a small town in Oklahoma right on the Arkansas border, and we would go grocery shopping there in the Fort Smith Van Buren area. We came out of the grocery store, and these women and young girls approached us about learning more about their community. A woman and her daughter, they're going to prey on, you know. Mm-hmm. They were putting flyers on cars, and my mom told them not to put that garbage on her car. They started telling my mom that this was the only way to heaven, and that if we didn't believe, we'd go to hell. My mom started pulling all the flyers off the cars around us, tore them up, and told them what they were advertising had nothing to do with heaven. Mm-hmm. She said, it's not Tony Alamo that's going to get you into heaven. You're going to have to talk to Jesus about that. Tony Alamo is nothing but a con man running a cult. And then she told them they should be ashamed of bringing their children into that mess. Wow. They started praying loudly for us that we would change, and semi-surrounded the car as we were trying to leave. My mom rolled down the window and told them if they didn't move, they were going to find out faster than they thought whether they were going to go to heaven.
So good.
Isn't her mom like magnificent?
That's such a good line.
There were 8 to 10 of them yelling at us as we were heathens. My mom was a badass, and I think she would have taken the lot of them had it come to that. You'll see if you're going to heaven.
Yeah.
On the bumper of my Buick. So that's how they would entice people. And thank God Michelle and her mom were smart enough to know it's bullshittery.
Right.
But a lot of people that, you know, don't have a place to go that need help.
If you're down on your luck.
Susan, in the meantime, has gotten breast cancer. It had gone into remission and come back and gone into remission and come back. And she ends up dying in 1982. And that is when people in the organization, I'm going to call it a cult, say that he became much more cruel. And, you know, wait till you hear what he does to her body in a moment. But he said, you guys weren't praying hard enough for her to be healed. And he started blaming the people in the group. All right. So Tony Alamo, I'm back to the denim and leather jackets. Tony Alamo fashions were stoned washed denim jackets with airbrushed bedazzled designs on them. And they became hugely popular. Celebrities like the aforementioned Michael Jackson. There's pictures online. You're going to die when you see him. Mr. T, Brooke Shields, and Dolly Parton, just to name a few, loved these colorful jackets, especially in magazines and album covers.
Wow.
So the way these were made was a literal sweatshop, including children, because their hands were tiny and they could wait till I read this description to you. The jackets were assembled in a factory in Alma, Arkansas that was converted from a large restaurant. First, the raw denim was washed in a drum filled with pumice and stones and bleach, and then it was cut and sewn into shape. Do you know how hard it is to sew denim?
No, but I imagine very hard. Yeah, that's thick.
It's terrible. From there, a basic stencil, a skyline or outline of a cartoon character was applied using a silk screen, and then the delicate work of airbrushing and embellishing would begin. Children manned the rhinestone station because they had small fingers. They would drop row after row of Swarovski, I can never say correctly, stones into tiny fittings. Oh, no. I mean, I can't even, it makes me cry. The working conditions were terrible. Bleach, fumes from the bleach in the stone washing drum were affecting, there's, 150 people, men, women, and children. They could work as long as 14-hour days. Sometimes the children's fingers bled from handling pointy rhinestones. I mean, so he called it Tony Alamo of Nashville jackets. I don't know why, because they weren't in Tennessee. But it was amazing. Like Mike Tyson, Burt Reynolds, all of these people, you don't know who someone is, right?
Sure.
You're like, I'm buying this thing and you don't want to look too closely.
No, absolutely.
One of my favorite parts is that when they were in Arkansas, I'm trying to find it because it makes me laugh so hard. Bill Clinton, he opened like a music place, and Dolly Parton played there along with some other stars. And at the time, Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton went to visit and called Tony Alamo Roy Orbison on speed.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that actually sounds pretty close. So Susan, said for many years that she had been cured of cancer. And then even though that was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1982, she actually gets cancer and she dies. Now, Tony, I don't think is very stable at this point. I don't know that he ever has been. He takes Susan's embalmed body back to their mansion in Dyer, Arkansas. And I'm sorry, Dyer, D-Y-E-R. And he told the followers that she would rise from the dead in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
He placed the open casket in the living room and instructed his followers to pray a prayer vigil until she rose. When 3 days had come and gone, Tony went into a rage, blaming the followers for not being faithful enough. So he ordered more prayer vigils, and they had to take turns over a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week for 6 months.
Oh, my gosh.
For 6 months. So the smell became intolerable. Even for Tony. So he had his followers build a white marble mausoleum for her near a heart-shaped swimming pool and finally laid her to rest.
Oh, wow.
So he'd been married 4 times before he met Susan, and he married a couple of times after Susan died. And then he married a Swedish-born model named Birgitta Gillenhammer, and she gave him an in into the New York fashion world. And that's how he began to kind of boost the popularity of the jackets.
Oh, okay.
So this is kind of super weird because there is a picture, and I couldn't tell who it was from the back, but when I found out who it was, I was like, wow. It's one of his most famous jackets. It's a denim jacket, and it's got Barbie on the back and with pink hair. Mm-hmm. And there's someone wearing it with pink and yellow hair, and it's Nicki Minaj.
Oh, this is amazing.
They're still popular.
Mm-hmm.
Even when people know who he is and what, So in 1986, there's a suit from the Department of Labor, that had gone on for all those years. And he not only lost the case, but was ordered to pay employees $15 million. And they lost their tax exempt status, which I wish would happen to the Church of Scientology. Probably going to get in trouble for saying that now. They're going to try and recruit me, but... So, he didn't accept the decision. He had his lawyers appealing the case, and he went into hiding. Some people think he was hiding up near us at the church here. Okay. But he would send tapes of his sermons, to the followers and then call on his loyal lieutenants to issue orders. I mean, he literally is like the definition of, like a mobster who's able to control things from prison. He really, so he's in hiding at one point, and he does end up going to prison, and he still could run things. I guess he still had millions of dollars hidden somewhere that he had access to.
Sure.
So at one point, the story of his cult appears on Unsolved Mysteries.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's pretty fascinating. So back in 1992, he is then back in court fighting the church's tax-exempt status, saying that we operated this under a private benefit, but we should still be able to get a tax-exempt status. So the IRS seizes some of the properties because he was really smart and he bought a lot of real estate. Mm-hmm. So the IRS seizes some of the properties so that they could sell them off to pay some of the people back and some of the charges. During his trial, there was testimony that said that the church had a total income of $9 million during the 3 years that Tony paid, zero taxes. All of these, things were coming up. He ordered several of his followers to move to a compound that he'd purchased in Arkansas near Texarkana. And this is when things I know it sounds like things have gone south. This is where things go really far south.
There's further south?
Yep.
Oh, no.
He tells his most loyal followers that they can visit him, but they must bring young girls to him that he can marry.
No.
During these visits, they would circle Tony, and one of his wives would shield him from surveillance cameras so he could molest the girls without being seen.
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good times. In 1994, Tony Alamo was sentenced to 6 years in prison after failing to pay taxes and wages, taxes to the government, wages to his employees. He served 4 years. The IRS seized assets from properties in Arkansas, Saugus, which is what they call where it was, and Nashville. They auctioned off hundreds of items, including church pews, a director's chair bearing the name Alamo, hundreds of jackets, and many of these have found their way onto vintage sites and eBay and Poshmark. It's so sad. So there's a tattoo artist who collects, he lives in Baltimore. He collects these jackets, and he goes, they're really one-of-a-kind pieces of art. He shows them on his Instagram page and, tries to draw attention to the detail and the intricate designs. I don't give a shit. He has purchased some jackets that feature illustrations of the Kentucky Derby, Gone with the Wind, and Batman. And these are really sought after. When Glazier spotted Nicki Minaj wearing the Barbie jacket, he said the demand went through the roof. The very rare ones are worth as much as $1,500, and the Barbie one will sell out in an hour if I put it on eBay.
Wow.
So one of the members, he was in the cult as a child, and he left when he was 17. And he said life has been difficult. He's undertaken the hard work of years of therapy to cope with, very complicated PTSD. I don't know if his parents helped him get in the cult or if he got in by himself. But, when this author says something about the jackets, he says, they do look awesome, don't they? And he realizes what he said, and he pauses, and he said, I guess I would tell people who wear them, once you know where they come from, try to go out of your way to help people less fortunate. Sure. Go to a place where women are battered or children need help. And if you can afford the jacket, chances are you can afford to go help somebody else.
I like that.
So this sweet person and other survivors felt a measure of relief when Tony Alamo died in federal prison in 2017. He was 82 years old. He dies in federal prison in 2017, and he'd been convicted of transporting underage girls across state lines, including a 9-year-old.
No, God.
Yeah.
So disgusting.
So this lovely ex-cult member says, Tony hated losing and would do anything to appear as a winner. He died a disgraced and bankrupt sex offender. But there are, believe it or not, Joshua, still people who follow his teachings, and his online website is still active and going. And it shows a gallery of celebrities wearing his jackets. I know. It's heartbreaking. So I usually don't ask tipsters questions like this, but since Joshua and I had the discussion on women in true crime, I'm going to ask if any of the tipsters got flyers under their windshield wipers, or if they have ever been, I don't want to say recruited into a cult, but I mean, here, tipster Michelle, her mom, gave a verbal tongue lashing to women who are trying to recruit, Michelle and her mom into their shitty, weird cult. So if anything like that's ever happened to you, I would love to know about it. You can find us on Facebook, our Facebook Just the Tipsters page. You can find us on any other social media platform, just at JT Tipsters on Instagram, at JT Tipsters Pod on Twitter. You can email us at jttipsters@gmail.com. You can call us on the Tipster hotline at 832-847-7837, and more cowbell.
If you would like to support this podcast and get early access and other cool murderous swag, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters.